Abnormal Pain, an old LPS series I made back in 2016 that's very close to my heart. Let's talk about why it's ass. This is another typical high school series where kids fight over mundane things like boys, petty pranks, and talent show awards. Let's dive into these 17 episodes and see what Abnormal Pain has in store. This video will likely be split into several parts, but they will all be uploaded at the same time, so you can continue through the links in the description. By the way, there's an opening that never got used. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
We are introduced to our main character, Sally Garcia, pacing around in her room while trying to get a hold of someone who won't pick up the phone. Immediately, she breaks down crying over this mystery person not returning her calls and starts blubbering about her miserable life. Much of this trauma dumping is clearly directed at the audience so we can know what she's going through, rather than simply showing us, which is pointless because moments later we are shown what her poor home life looks like. She goes downstairs to eat breakfast with her family in this dull-ass kitchen and is immediately ridiculed by her, for some reason, British mom. Only the mom is British because I guess she's the fancy, elegant one, and that automatically equates to having an accent. The dad asks if Sally wants breakfast, which, yeah, it's kind of a necessity. Sally's mom starts giving her a hard time about her glasses because I guess they're ugly, and it spirals into a whole big fight at the table. We learn that the mom and Sally's younger sister, Fern, are both incredibly toxic and cruel to her, Fern having learned the behavior from her mother. The only person on Sally's side seems to be her dad, but it doesn't do her any good because he's a total doormat, doing whatever his wife says. This flaw never seems to be called out, by the way, and he's constantly glorified for being the only good person in Sally's home, despite the fact he's contributing to the abuse by not doing anything to stop it. Sally's mom finally puts her foot down and punishes her with no dinner. We finally move on to school, and it's Sally's first day of 10th grade. Here we meet her best friend Bridget, who Sally ends up trauma dumping to. Bridget suggests she move in with her grandma because apparently that's an option. Sally says it's a good idea and she'll recommend it to her dad later that day, which she never actually does. I guess we can't have our characters solve their problems that easily, but then why even bring it up as a possibility? They talk a bit more about Sally's backstory, how she was homeschooled by mom aside from preschool, which was where she met Bridget. It's pretty clear she's sharing all this to the audience so that we can know rather than having a natural conversation with her friend. Right off the bat, we've got a recurring telling instead of showing problem on our hands. Sally's apparently been homeschooled by her mom all her life and claims to have learned nothing through the entire process because all she's done is belittle her. How in the world is she able to immediately jump into 10th grade having learned supposedly nothing? Wouldn't she have gotten held back? Why couldn't dad homeschool her? I guess the mom is a control freak? At any rate, we are introduced to the main love interest of the series, because of course men couldn't exist in my series without being romantically involved with the main character somehow. And in case you were wondering, no, they don't have their own personalities either. They only serve their roles as the love interests and have nothing to offer outside of it. This man approaches Sally and Bridget asking them to move so he can get to his locker.
Excuse me, lovely ladies, I need to get to my locker behind you.
If a guy in high school ever said that to me, I'd be running for the hills. We are then hit with one of the most secondhand embarrassing scenes I've ever concocted, in which Sally is whispering about how stunning he is.
Oh, my dog. He's stunning, isn't he? You know I'm right here, right?
Love of God! For the love of God!
Anyway, this boy tells them that they'd better get going because class is starting soon, but once they start leaving, he stops them to introduce himself as Stanley. Dude, pick one. By the way, they all introduce themselves by first and last names, which no one does. Moving ahead, we have a small scene in which Sally is whispering to Bridget in class and gets called out by the teacher, resulting in the students laughing at her. It's very short and seems unimportant, but we'll talk about it in a moment. We then cut to the final scene in the episode where Sally is walking down the hall and a random rabbit accidentally runs straight into her, knocking her over and breaking her glasses. The glass breaking sound effect is really loud and dramatic and not what a pair of glasses shattering would sound like, by the way. As a result of this, Sally completely goes off the handle, exploding at this girl. I just want to say, I think this scene had some potential. This has been a terrible day for Sally, between her family life, being embarrassed in class, and overall being stressed due to the first day of school. All these factors combined might warrant such an outburst, even if what the rabbit did was a complete accident, but there's a few reasons this doesn't work. For one, the events of today are so spread out that Sally has time to calm down in between each one. She doesn't seem like she's at the end of her rope when she gets run into. There aren't any signs of pre-established anger or distress that would cause her to lose her cool in the blink of an eye. The second reason this doesn't work is that Sally hesitates for a moment before she unleashes the beast on this girl. It's not an immediate explosion of anger from being pushed over the edge. She thought about how she was going to react, so it reads like an intentional attack on this girl. Especially because she proceeds to get extremely personal, villainizing her as if she had done this with ill intent. She also just makes a random comment on her weight, probably so I could check random body issues off the list of mandatory plot points in an LPS series. The girl cries and runs off, and Sally is approached and rightfully held accountable by Bridget. Sally immediately makes excuses about her bad day and her poor family life, but Bridget's not having any of it. Good for her! She tells Sally that maybe she's just not worth it, to which she responds, "I deserve this. I understand you don't want to be friends," and leaves. For some reason, Bridget calls after her saying that's not what she meant, that she still wanted to be friends with Sally, but that's certainly not what it sounded like from the way she was phrasing things. And with that, the episode ends on a dramatic, gloomy note. Well, that escalated quickly. All this malarkey in the span of, 10 minutes? In the very first episode? It feels like one big guilt trip for our main character so we can feel bad for her without actually getting to know who she is outside of her trauma. This is a repeated theme throughout the series, with Sally being nothing but a plot device for bad things to continue happening.
I will give you
Character development.
just to snatch it from you.
Sally comes home to her father and starts lying about how her day had gone wonderfully and how she'd made so many friends, only for her dad to cut her off by telling her that her mom isn't home. And with that, Sally completely breaks down, being more honest and vulnerable about her day. So it seems she can't be herself around her mother. This is actually a smart way to show instead of tell, and I wish more of it was present throughout the series. Sally vents about her day, saying she feels so traumatized now. I hate to be rude, but just the phrasing of it sounds really silly and melodramatic. Especially considering what went down with the rabbit was her own fault. Speaking of, she describes said rabbit as this girl who intentionally broke her glasses, which is just a straight up lie. What the girl had done was an accident, and how Sally responded was an unnecessary attack on her. Even her dad calls her out for this, saying that it wasn't intentional on her part, to which Sally responds, "It was to me." What the hell are you talking about, it was to you? It was intentional in your eyes? That's just objectively false. You can't just decide it was on purpose because your feelings got hurt. You can feel upset about the experience, but villainizing this stranger even now, hours after it happened and you're safely home, is preposterous. Plus, she did take responsibility after Bridget called her out, saying she deserved it if she didn't want to be friends with her anymore. What's with all the sudden switching? It feels very manipulative on Sally's part. We get a repeat of Bridget's dialogue, this time with Dad holding Sally accountable for her own actions, and she runs off crying, claiming she wants to be alone. While melting down in her room, she cries out with really awkward, unnatural dialogue such as, "This is such an awful turn of events." This happens a lot in my old videos, and it's because I wanted to be an author and got really descriptive with my words, which I failed to translate from writing to natural sounding dialogue. While an author may describe something as an awful turn of events, no one actually says that in real life during a mental breakdown mid-crying. This weird dialogue continues as Sally decides to switch gears, proposing that she'll be just fine without Bridget and that she should befriend that girl who ran into her.
I mean, I know she didn't mean to, but maybe tomorrow I could bombard her with some compliments. I can practically hammer her into the ground, showering her with nice words.
That sounds like a threat! Anyway, she finally stops being irrational and recognizes the fault in her own actions, planning to make friends with this girl the next day, in her own words, just so she won't feel threatened by me. Weird reasoning there. Why don't you just apologize to her? We end off the scene with Sally looking forward to the new day, happy and content despite the fact she may have lost her best friend of several years. She's perfectly fine not having Bridget by her side anymore. Even though she walks right up to her the next day and says hello like nothing happened. Weirdly enough, Bridget is the one to now apologize to Sally because she pities her poor home life and abusive mother. She feels that she was in the wrong, that she was betraying Sally by holding her accountable for her actions that cannot be excused by her personal life. Well, I guess Sally's whole speech from the previous scene is useless now because Bridget shares that she got to know the girl from the incident herself, completely off screen. Her name is Mary, and while she is afraid of Sally, she apparently wants to get to know her even though her only impression of her is an awful person. Bridget then sees one of her other friends in the distance and calls him over, this friend being Waldo, a pal of Stanley's. She addresses him, however, by W. It's some stupid-ass nickname he had from elementary school that apparently stuck, that isn't clever at all. Like, wouldn't you grow out of that by now? How old are they again? Bridget then goes on to announce that she shared everything that had happened the day prior to Waldo, as well as Sally's abusive home life, despite her knowing nothing about this guy. Just casually oversharing about a close friend's trauma as if she had any permission or reason to do so. Sally doesn't seem to give a shit either, it's just normal. He goes to class and Bridget proceeds to swoon over him because of course we can't have any male characters without them being the love interests and nothing more. After that nonsense, Sally and Bridget finally get to the point and wander off to meet up with Mary. As soon as they come face to face, it's pretty apparent that she is the one traumatized from yesterday's events, which only makes Sally's previous whining all the more irritating. At least she apologizes here, despite it being lackluster and Bridget basically excusing her actions for their poor home life. Then, out of nowhere, in the middle of them properly meeting each other, Gwen from Camp Riverwood, a random cat goes running through the halls like a rabid preschooler who had a sip of her mom's coffee and crashes into the two of them with a dramatic-ass suspense sound effect. By the way, didn't think I'd ever had to critique the physics in my LPS series, but she crashed directly into Mary, which somehow unleashed a domino effect onto Sally, which then launched her into a nearby locker down the hall. Mary only collapsed onto the ground right there, so it makes sense for Sally to do the same. But for some reason, she gets thrown across the hallway. Maybe because the main character has to suffer a comedic amount for the conflict to ensue. The cat gives a lackluster apology about the same level as Sally's and runs off. Mary proceeds to help Sally up, to which she briefly calls her heavy. This is of course the bombshell that causes them to break out into yet another one-sided fight, with Sally getting offended and screaming at her and Mary trying to apologize for the unnecessary comment. Pretty interesting how this crosses the line, yet Sally was allowed to purposefully insult her weight the previous day. I guess she just gets a free pass because of her trauma. What's your excuse for making a brief comment without realizing the potentially mean implications of it, Mary? Do you have a cruddy home life? Do you have pent-up trauma? Do you have a shitty mom that falls into destructive habits that negatively affect you in your day-to-day life? Oh, wait, she actually does. Interesting. You don't see her randomly lashing out at other students and being extremely insulting. After once again blowing things out of proportion, Sally runs off into the distance with Mary chasing after her. Once she reaches Sally, she once again bumps into her, knocking her over. She's so comically clumsy, and it's clear this is only done to stir up more conflict. Sally once again villainizes her for this act despite the fact it's an accident again. Has she learned nothing? She just lost all her development in the blink of an eye, and it feels even less warranted this time around because she has ultimately nothing to be angry over. She calls Mary a loser and runs off once again. For some reason, this little nickname is like a breaking point for Mary as it sends her over the edge crying. It's such a mild elementary level insult and you can't take it seriously when she gets upset over it. The second episode comes to a close, and all we've accomplished is establishing the protagonist as an insufferable woe-is-me character and giving her development only to snatch it from her within the same episode. It's basically just a repeat of the first.
You want me to be the bad guy? Fine. Now I'm the bad guy.
This episode opens with Sally approaching Bridget yet again, assuming Bridget no longer wants to be her friend after yesterday's blowout. This whole scene is just Sally being guilt-trippy and whining about how she's so worthless because she was so mean to Mary. Bridget basically just excuses it all and tries to lift Sally's spirits, staying by her side. I love toxic friendships. She proposes that they just avoid Mary, that maybe she and Sally just can't get along, and while I agree with that, Sally should still be held accountable for her own actions. She should also properly apologize to Mary for her behavior. Plus, this is all just a repeat of previous events. Sally exploding at a random girl which threatens her friendship with Bridget, but things turn out alright between the two of them. It feels like this all could have been condensed, leaving out the second incident entirely. Meanwhile, Stanley and Waldo approach the duo, and the conversation somehow shifts towards Sally's personal problems again. Waldo goes on to share the nitty-gritty of her shitty home life to Stanley right in front of her face, and yet again she doesn't bat an eye. I guess no one has any sense of privacy here. Why can't we learn about the other characters and their home lives? I get that Sally's the main character, but I know nothing about any of these people outside of their respective roles. The best friend character, the love interest, the best friend's love interest, it all comes back to Sally in the end. This is her story and her story only. We then shift to the main core conflict of this series. The group sees Mary approaching from a distance, and for some reason all become uneasy and awkward. Bridget tells them to avoid eye contact and act natural. Here's an idea. How about you just confront the problem and apologize to her? You absolutely don't have to be friends, but you could at least give her some closure for Sally's terrible actions. Well, it's a little too late for that because she finally reaches the group and has a sudden personality switch as she goes from some timid, anxious little bunny to hammering Sally with personal insults, basically giving her a taste of her own medicine. She also randomly trauma dumps about her own personal life as if it has any relevance, basically repeating the actions of her bully, talking about her alcoholic mom and anxiety disorder. I think this choice could have been interesting and handled well because people do repeat the actions of those who hurt them all the time. But as usual, it doesn't work here. It's a sudden, jarring personality switch that shares zero qualities with the Mary we knew before. Speaking of personality switch, Sally is suddenly super timid and anxious and scared, almost like Mary was. It looks like your personality just depends on what role you play. She also calls her a wiener dog, which is obviously taken from LPS Popular, but in that context, Savannah was a dachshund. She's long. She's shaped like a wiener. That's why it's so offensive. That's why it's a derogatory term in the world building of Littlest Pet Shop high school dramas. But Sally is a beagle, so it doesn't even make any sense. I thought this was an insult I could just throw at any dog LPS without actually knowing what it meant to begin with. Mary then goes on to establish what the rest of the series will be about.
I am going to make your life absolutely miserable.
Sally runs off to the bathroom where she enters one of the stalls, aka small containers of paint, and cries her eyes out. She wallows in regret, saying, "If only I could undo all those horrible actions," which are words no one speaks coherently in the middle of a blubbering meltdown. These meltdown scenes have too many complete thoughts and sentences and it bugs me. It kills the vibe. Make one of these characters sob their eyes out with no coherent speaking, no explaining to the audience how they're feeling, just endless wallowing. There's a bit where Sally sees her reflection in the stall door and she slaps it, but it doesn't really work because you can barely see a reflection of any kind. Soon enough, Mary enters the bathroom because she somehow knew Sally had gone in here and hunts her down to harass her further. She also just wanders into the stall? Is there no lock on it? Did she crawl underneath the stall? Oh wait, she couldn't have because the stalls are just cans of paint and there are no gaps underneath them like real stalls. Although the vision of Mary just crawling under the stall on the nasty ass floor to harass the student like a heathen is fucking hilarious, and I kinda would've killed for that. Kimberly vibes, honestly. Anyway, Mary further bombards her with personal insults, now attacking her family life, saying they don't love her and they probably have nightmares and seizures when they think about her. Ignoring the very stupid elephant in the room there, Sally using her personal life as an excuse has finally backfired on her as Mary now uses it to her advantage to insult her very personally. This is why we practice our privacy. She eventually runs out of there, hopefully going to class because that's what school is supposed to be about, goddammit, and leaves Mary alone. Strangely enough, Mary has the gall to start crying at the end of the scene, out of nowhere. Why? Moving ahead to the final fraction of this episode with horrendous lighting, we establish a new plotline, the school talent show. The prize for the first place winner is apparently a private jet. A private-ass jet.
Watch your jet, bro. Watch your jet!
How much money does the school have? Imagine how much of that budget could have gone to more important things, like essential tools for the teachers, or to upgrade some of the clubs, or to host a fundraiser. Maybe supply this teacher with more than just a soda can and a history textbook on his desk. Or produce better flyers than a piece of yellow foam paper. These kids are what, 15? Don't you need a license to fly those things? What if the winner crashes it into the school? What the hell do any of these kids even need a private jet for? To grab a coffee down the street? This is madness.
You are uneducated mess! Quit drinking!
This episode opens with Mary sitting at lunch, angrily watching Sally and her friends from afar, while a random horse sitting next to her asks if she's going to eat anything.
No? What, do you want me to get fat like you?
Why is it now that she's out to get Sally, she's suddenly cruel and mean to everyone in sight, especially when that wasn't at all her character before? And with an anxiety disorder too? For having a disorder that causes you to overthink the consequences of every little choice you make, she sure doesn't seem to care about the consequences of the choices she makes. She continues this as she explains how she's brainstorming plans against Sally as if the previous harassment wasn't enough.
Wow, what kind of friend are you?
Since when does Mary have a single friend? Meanwhile, Sally and Bridget are discussing plans for the talent show. Sally's doubting her abilities, or lack thereof, worrying that she doesn't have what it takes. Bridget uplifts her with the possibility of becoming popular after winning the talent show, as if your main motivator for participating should not be the possibility of obtaining your very own private jet. The idea of popularity is enough to spark up Sally's motivation apparently, and they bring up the idea of her singing as it's a hobby of hers. They brainstorm some ideas like writing a betrayal song and dedicating it to Mary as if there were any betrayal there. Side note, the name of episode 3 was Traitor. There is no betrayal. Mary was not friends with them. Mary didn't owe them anything. Sally deserved a talking to, certainly not in the way Mary handled it, but still needed to be held responsible. If anything, Bridget should feel betrayed by Sally's failure to change and treat this person with respect, even after she vowed to do so. Meanwhile, Mary gets a bright idea and wanders over to Sally's table to further torment and, for whatever reason, fat shame her. She once again brings up her anxiety disorder as leverage to justify her treatment towards Sally, basically planning to get rid of said disorder by bullying her. How would starting problems with a random student who is mean to you twice suddenly get rid of an entire psychological disorder? If only it were that easy. Bridget ends up being the most mature one here, explaining that Mary shouldn't just resort to bullying her back, and that they were going to leave her alone. She even sympathizes with Mary, acknowledging that none of what happened before had been her fault, that it was Sally's, and recognized that they shouldn't interact due to Sally's behavior. Unfortunately, Mary is beyond reasoning.
I just can't help but notice that you are such a dog.
What kind of line is that? What did she think she was doing there? The fight ends up steering in the direction of the talent show, and Mary goes on to explain her whole history with dancing and how she's going to be performing an elegant dance at the show. Mary then does something shocking, something revolutionary, something truly extraordinary, something that's never been done in an LPS series ever before. She throws food in her face. Well, throw might be a bit of an exaggeration. In reality, she awkwardly walks up to Sally, who makes no effort to fight back and just kind of places the food on her face. Of course, the students around her laugh at her utter humiliation while Mary relishes in the moment, going on to lick some of the food off Sally's face? Also, who has an entire ice cream cone for lunch at school? Someone's asking for diabetes. Sally runs off. How many times has that happened now? And Mary follows it all up with, "That'll teach her to stay out of my way." I think the first encounter was enough to teach her a lesson, sweetie. Later that day, the two friends go to Sally's place to brainstorm for the talent show. Sally gets a sudden burst of confidence and settles on the idea to perform something for Stanley and ask him out on stage in front of presumably hundreds of people after she's done with her act. Where is this boldness coming from all of a sudden? The Sally we know wouldn't dream of doing something like that. They also propose getting Waldo in on the group, but this never actually happens or goes anywhere. Their final plan is to sing a song dedicated to Stanley, with Sally singing and Bridget writing the song. Now, there's an important detail here that I want you all to remember.
Did you figure out what date the talent show is? I'm pretty sure it's September 30th.
Keep this detail in mind when we approach a later episode down the line. The episode cuts to Mary and we get a taste of her home life as she walks in on her mother drinking. She tries to talk some sense into her mom, who isn't really displaying any signs of being drunk when she suddenly takes a step towards her. This causes Mary to panic and run off to her room, likely implying that her mom is physically abusive when she's under the influence. How about that, Sally? Is your mom a dirty alcoholic? Has your mom ever laid her hands on you? Psh, what excuse does she have to bully Mary when she doesn't have it nearly as bad? Mary has a mental breakdown in her room and we get some more of that weird dialogue.
Why does she keep getting drunk? Why? What benefit does she get out of it?
Nobody talks this clearly and coherently while having a blubbering meltdown. Things suddenly turn religious as she pulls a Bible out of nowhere and says, "God forgives us for our sins." What sins are we talking specifically here? Drinking? Educate me. Does it say "thou shalt not drink" in the Bible somewhere? What does the Bible have to do with any of this? What is the point of this scene? What importance does religion actually have to the story? It never even gets brought up again. Mary then pulls out a guitar and plays a random copyright-free tune, assuring herself that everything will be okay. There's this weird moment where wind is blowing through the windows and the curtains shift because I was trying to be cinematic, but it's just kind of stupid looking. And with that, the episode comes to a close.
Man, do you have any shaving cream? No, I don't like the way that it tastes. Wait, you eat shaving cream? No, why would I eat it if I don't like the taste?
The episode opens with Sally and Bridget in the principal's office to turn in their applications for the talent show. There's a massive crowd gathering around one particular person, Mary. She's bragging about her plan to dance at the talent show and how her routine is going to be the best. Stop! I'm tired of the shenanigans! What's even the point of throwing in a popularity plot? And why does anyone care about her dancing for an act? You think no one else is doing that? You think you're special? Why is she even popular simply for announcing that she's going to do a little dance? She hasn't even won yet. There's nothing to brag about nor celebrate. Does Mary even like all the attention? Why does she crave validation for something so minuscule? Does she not receive any at home? I thought her whole goal with her antics was simply to get back at Sally and make her suffer for the previous behavior inflicted on her. Having a reputation has nothing to do with any of this.
Everyone is totally going to envy me now. That's very nice, Mary. Now get out of the office.
She has a few choice words for Sally before leaving the office, then the girls finally have a chance to turn in their forum. The principal apologizes for Mary's behavior, claiming she will receive consequences. This never goes anywhere, of course. With that nothing burger scene out of the way, we cut to later when Bridget has a marvelous idea that definitely won't have any negative consequences. She suggests to Sally that they pull a prank on Mary to get her off their backs. Sally argues that beating Mary at the talent show will be enough to get back at her, but Bridget counters that, saying that'll just motivate Mary to hurt them more. But can't you apply that same logic here? Won't pulling a prank on her only encourage her to take the harassment further? The best thing you can do is tell the adults. The principal even said she would take action. No need to stir the pot. Well, I spent this whole time thinking Bridget was the mature one of the group, but perhaps I was wrong. She convinces Sally to go through with the prank, and they plan to spray a bunch of shaving cream into the slits of Mary's locker. Stanley and Waldo aren't far from the two, talking to my mascot, talking to some random tiger cat. They part ways with her, saying they're gonna go talk to Sally and Bridget.
See ya, and have fun with the Ratchet, I guess.
God damn! The Ratchet? Is Ratchet a noun? Why are the boys even hanging out with someone like this? They approach the girls and they explain their plan. Waldo points out the risk of being caught by the security cameras in the hallway, to which Bridget has a perfectly convenient excuse. Supposedly, these cameras are simply audio cameras and only pick up on sound, so as long as they whisper, they shouldn't get caught. Let's uncover the layers of bullshit here. What kind of security system only picks up on audio? I've heard of cameras that only pick up on visuals, but not the other way around. That kind of flawed system doesn't sound like it protects anyone. Plus, even with this established, a later scene shows Sally audibly laughing at Mary after the prank, and the blame can easily be traced back to them. Now the adults that might have been on your side before will no longer trust you. And on top of that, how does Bridget even know this information to begin with? And what about the key witnesses in the hallway? Sally clearly doesn't have a good reputation, and with Mary bragging about her dance routine and having the student body wrapped around her finger, I'm sure said key witnesses will warn Mary ahead of time and get Sally into trouble. Despite all these risks, the girls go along with it, and soon enough, Stanley, Waldo, and the rest of the students break away for class. There's this moment where Sally's enthusiastic about getting started, but Bridget tells her to wait for the final bell, so they sit awkwardly waiting for it and then proceed to get started. Eventually, they get to work spraying shaving cream into her locker through what is supposed to be a montage. Unfortunately, the montage doesn't really work because it's just the same action of spraying the cans over and over with slightly different angles. There's nothing creative or different about the movements that warrants a montage. Also, not one student walks by and witnesses this, obviously. Eventually, we move on to the result of the prank. It's after class, and Mary wanders into the hallway to the scene of the crime. For some reason, she's talking like a typical mean popular girl as she passes the students, continuing to brag about her dance and having a rude comment for a random lesbian cat that calls her hot. As she approaches her locker, Sally and Bridget barely contain their laughter. With an open of the door, a goofy-ass sound effect, and the gasps of several students around, the shaving cream completely explodes onto her face and body. Somehow. Isn't it just sitting in there ruining all her school supplies and damaging the property, which will most likely result in fines from the school? Is the locker just so crammed with shaving cream that it blows right up in her face? And why does public humiliation have to be the biggest consequence of this? What about the damage done to all her supplies in the school property? She'll have to replace all those, resulting in a loss of money and probably important schoolwork and notes. The amount of money Sally and Bridget would owe her and the school in this situation should be the biggest concern here, but none of this ever gets brought up. It's all a plot device so Mary can get laughed at. She exchanges some quips with Sally as she realizes who's obviously responsible for this. Sally ends the back and forth by calling Mary a loser, which, just like in episode 2, seems to be some kind of weird trigger word for her. She completely snaps at this comment, spiraling into goofy insults with comedic delivery that make it difficult to take the scene seriously.
You're just a fat, ugly hot dog.
And with that, the episode comes to a close.
What do lesbians do to you?
We start this one off in the cafeteria, where we see the gang sitting at a table planning yet another stunt on Mary for some reason, as if the earlier incident wasn't enough. From afar, Mary's dealing with the aftermath, being poked fun at by some nearby kids when she suddenly gets an idea.
Go sit at another table. I need some thinking time. Alone? Mary's scary.
Okay. Couldn't they have just ran off panicking like the other students, showing they find Mary scary rather than telling us like we're incompetent preschoolers? Meanwhile, the gang discusses their prank plan. Stanley and Waldo, apparently being the sane ones in this situation, point out the risk of security cameras catching them in the act as well as potentially hurting Mary. Sally points out that they're just visual cameras with no audio. So you still get caught in the act. How does that help you in any way whatsoever? How does Sally even have this information? Why do the students know all the specific security cameras throughout the school and all their abilities?
But, I mean, maybe it was just a prank, bro.
Meanwhile, Mary's bright idea is to spread a bunch of rumors about Sally. At this point, it's just a competition of ruining the other's reputation. She tells all the kids around her who, despite having just seen her covered in shaving cream earlier, how'd she get that cleaned up anyway? Believe her to be a reliable source. Sally starts approaching the crowd to see what's going on, to which Bridget tells her not to come closer. Despite her warnings, of course, Sally does it anyway and faces the consequences. Apparently, Mary spread rumors that Sally and Bridget were lesbians who kissed behind the vending machine, and everyone, each and every individual in this school, finds it deplorable.
You are gay! Dirty lesbian?
This is fucking hilarious. The homophobic comments coming from these students are absolutely ridiculous, by the way. Someone accuses Sally of having evil lesbian instincts, and another calls her a gay ratchet. I'm also not really convinced that none of these students are LGBT, or at least accepting themselves. Every single one of them hates gay people. What about that one cat who literally called Mary hot to her face? How is she not being made fun of for evidently being into women? That's not even hearsay like this is. I'd like to quickly point out that Sally is not the only victim in this situation. Bridget has also been falsely accused right along with her, yet for some reason Sally seems to be the only one that matters. She runs off and cries into a random room again with some truly stellar acting skills on my part.
Why do people criticize others because of their beliefs in sexuality? It's not fair. I just lost all faith in humanity.
It's clear I was kind of making fun of homophobes here and speaking my thoughts through Sally, and while you can poke fun at people like that and make it work, it's just not the time nor the place. Plus, I don't understand the beliefs comment. There's not really a belief in being gay. If you're gay, you're just gay. You're not really believing anything. You can't just not believe in gay people. They're not mythical creatures. Sally then begins to look around and realizes where she is. This room is full of candies, desserts, a whole ass TV.
Yo! A TV! When did you even bring that in class?
And whatever this monstrosity is. She suddenly deduces that she's in the teacher's lounge, where the staff are apparently spoiled rotten with a buffet of sweets. I don't know what I thought a teacher's lounge was. They're literally just rooms for teachers and staff to relax and take their breaks. They're pretty fucking normal. There's an abrupt tonal change here where Sally begins to celebrate where she is, even though she could easily get caught and punished for being here. Speaking of, it's way too convenient that there are no staff here to witness this. Not one employee is on break here. How overworked are these teachers? Maybe the buffet in the lounge is to make up for that. Some joyful music starts up as Sally runs around, ready to dig into some of this food, only to stop and realize the risks of getting caught. She starts randomly monologuing and telling the audience about all her problems again. We get it. What else do you do? What the hell are you? The joyful music continues through the speech and it's obviously not fitting at all. I was going for some kind of montage with the upbeat music playing as she digs into the food and has a blast in the lounge, but that didn't really end up happening because she had to stop and deliver a sob story first. The same sob story we've been hearing since the first episode. She also mentions that there are no security cameras in there, which I'd find interesting. Do the teachers not need to be monitored as well? Eventually, she comes down from her excitement and spots something behind the TV. She goes on to check it out, only to see that it's alcohol, something most definitely prohibited on school grounds. And so begins yet another plot point, as if the talent show and rivalry with Mary wasn't enough drama. Maybe because the same back and forth nonsense just kept repeating between the two and it was getting old. In the halls, people are gossiping about the supposed lesbians. They are comically invested in this. Some dude is literally on the phone gossiping about these random lesbians in the school like he's completely blown away by it. Even that one cat is in on it, although she's not actively being homophobic. She's just asking around if Sally and Bridget are official. My theory? She's trying to confirm whether or not they are actually committed to each other to see if she can get in on some of that action. Anyway, Sally quickly approaches Bridget with the information she's just obtained about alcohol being present in the teacher's lounge. She's shocked by this as they discuss the dangers of it and what they should do about it, like telling the principal or some kind of staff what they saw. They might get in trouble for being in the lounge, but I don't think that would be the staff's priority upon learning that an employee is bringing alcohol into the school. The scene drags on with the two of them theorizing and discussing what to do, like telling the principal or some kind of staff what they saw. Even after like 2 minutes, Bridget's still in disbelief, saying, "There's no way they're sneaking alcohol in here." There is a way, dude. Alright, we've been here. Can we move on? They continue to brainstorm ideas of what they should do about the situation, like telling the principal or some kind of staff what they saw. Oh, never mind. I guess they're just gonna go around quizzing teachers with random questions to narrow down who it might be. Why? What kind of questions would even help you come to a proper conclusion? Bridget mentions it's likely a teacher who acts crazy or a teacher who seems drowsy or lightheaded. I think if a teacher was tipsy at their place of work, it would have been noticed and taken care of by now. No way can they breeze through a lesson without someone noticing stumbling, slurred speech, slow or incoherent statements and questions, and other symptoms. Symptoms? This whole scene is full of nonsensical plot holes and lasts about 4 to 5 minutes. I think it's time we move on to bigger and not really better things.
Be sure to thank your parents for spending $79.99. Are they having problems? Are they fighting a lot? It's probably your fault.
This one opens with Sally and Bridget brainstorming questions to ask the teacher. Oh my god, we're really doing this? Just tell an adult! These questions are beyond strange, like asking what their favorite color is, as if that has any relevance whatsoever. I get they're just kids using dumb kid logic, but high schoolers aren't this naive. Plus, it's not painted in a silly, childish light to make this kid logic work. It's played as serious and genuine. You really have to wonder what other kinds of questions they're putting down that they think will help them further this investigation. With that short scene aside, Sally goes home to a rather chilling sight. Her parents are in a full-on fight. Yep, out of nowhere, after basically not seeing her parents for a few episodes, by the way. Like, I don't think her family's had any real scenes since episode 2. They were just used to establish how hard her life is, excuse her actions towards Mary, and then tossed aside until now. Her parents are arguing over her mom's treatment of Sally and her negative influence on Fern. Remember Fern? Her sister? What'd she have, one scene? The dad is just suddenly standing his ground after presumably years of being a doormat with no build-up leading to this moment. Whatever surge of confidence he found happened completely off-screen, making this all feel out of nowhere.
I don't know why you and that righteous Sally can't just obey my orders and be elegant.
Why does everyone call Sally a ratchet? You're not even using it correctly. Why is this the $1 million word when it comes to nicknaming her? The dad tries to kick his wife out despite her claims that she pays rent for the place. Yeah, sorry dad, but if you're not contributing to rent, she's got you there. Also, isn't it a house? What rent? It's called a mortgage. He demands that she and Fern leave because I guess he doesn't even want to give his other child a chance at redemption. The kid is 6. Wouldn't you rather take her yourself and raise her to be a better individual with a loving family? He even says that so-called daughter of yours. Like, why is he disowning her? Part of this is your responsibility for never stepping up and taking initiative. Things get physical as they start tussling, and Sally runs off to her room in fear. Where the fuck is Fern during all this, by the way? I don't know, doesn't matter, we never learn. Sally's the only victim here. Sally ends up calling Bridget over the phone for emotional support, who we can barely hear on the other end. It's actually kind of a scary situation, and Sally's dialogue actually makes you feel for her for once. She's totally defenseless, just a kid whose parents are fighting like they never had before, and she has no idea what to do. But while Bridget's trying to help her out, she just gets mad and tells her to leave her alone, ending the call. Seems like an odd choice. Sally should absolutely stay on the phone as a safety precaution because things could be escalating to a dangerous level. Hell, maybe call the police? I don't know, just a silly little thought. Suddenly, her dad bursts into the room and tells her to hurry up and pack her things because they're moving out. That's a lot of shit to pack, dude. Do you even have any boxes? What about a moving van for her bed and other big furniture that they need? This doesn't sound very legal on the dad's part either. He doesn't have custody over either of these kids. Wouldn't they need to file a divorce first and foremost? This is such a complicated process, and it feels like all the details are simply glazed over. If it was this easy to just leave and take the kids, Dad should have done it years ago. We're left on a cliffhanger here, and we shift to Mary's home life. What's up with her? Well, her mom enters her room and has a talk with her.
Don't worry, honey. I'm not drunk anymore. I've completely recovered.
So you're sober. That's the correct term, 12-year-old Allison. And are we talking about the other night? Of course you're not drunk anymore. It's been several days. She goes on to say she's going to quit drinking and that she got rid of all her alcohol, sold it to a drugstore nearby. That's not how that works. Just toss it. Apparently, a customer purchased the alcohol from the drugstore, and now the drugstore is going to send the mom the money for it? What are you talking about? It's yours now. You should have already given her the money after she sold it to you. That is the whole point. That is what it means to sell something. She ends up mentioning Mary's anxiety disorder, which, yeah, whatever happened to that? It doesn't seem like it's been affecting her at all whatsoever, which is incredibly unlikely considering it's a literal disorder. Mary says her anxiety hasn't been affecting her much and she thinks she's completely cured, to which her mom reminds her it's a disorder and it's never fully gone. Well, it sure seems to be gone! Meanwhile, the cliffhanger we were left on earlier is completely useless as the episode ends with further information on how Sally's doing. Except we can barely hear anything she's saying on the other end of Bridget's phone. In summary, Sally, her dad, and her sister are out of the house and moving somewhere far away. I guess her dad better be prepared to settle this in court because I doubt his wife is just going to conveniently let this all slide without discussing the matters of divorce or custody over her children whatsoever. And that's all there is to this part. If you want to continue this review, all the parts are linked in the description below. See you in the next one.